Good morning, everybody. This is Mike Brennan here at the National Hurricane Center. It's just after 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, October 8th, coming on with the latest on a very dangerous and very powerful Hurricane Milton, which is centered over the south central Gulf of Mexico this morning, just to the north of the Yucatan Peninsula, moving off to the east-northeast at about 9 miles per hour. We want to really focus today on the multiple life-threatening hazards that Milton is going to bring to much of the Florida Peninsula beginning during the day on Wednesday. So let's start off first with the storm surge risk. Along the west coast of Florida, we have a storm surge warning in effect from Flamingo all the way north through Naples, Fort Myers, Port Charlotte, Sarasota, Tampa Bay region, up to the north, up to almost past Cedar Key, up to Suwannee River. Everywhere in this region is at the risk of life-threatening inundation from storm surge. We are especially concerned about this area from near Clearwater, Anclote River down to Inglewood through Sarasota, where we are expecting 10 to 15 feet of inundation above ground level somewhere in this area, and that includes the Tampa Bay region. So this is the potential for life-threatening destructive storm surge that could affect much of the west coast of Florida, even south of there from Inglewood to Bonita Beach. 6 to 10 feet of inundation expected, 4 to 7 feet from Bonita Beach to Chokoloskee, and north of Anclote River 5 to 10 feet up to Yankeetown. So again, let's talk about storm surge. What are the risks that are going to come with storm surge? First, know if you live in a storm surge evacuation zone. In the counties along the Florida west coast, the zones are lettered from A through F. Many evacuations have been called for by local officials. Go to floridadisaster.org/KNOW. You still have today to get out of those storm surge evacuation zones. Remember, you only have to travel tens of miles, not hundreds of miles, to get to a safe location. So let's talk about the impacts of storm surge. You're going to see large areas covered with deep water from the Gulf of Mexico pushing inland. Structural damage to building, especially from destructive wave action, with some buildings being totally washed away. Some locations may be uninhabitable for an extended period, and again, that's why you're being asked to leave by your local officials. Roads will be washed out and flooded, and there will be major damage to marinas, docks, boardwalks, and piers. So again, just a reminder, pleading with you to get out of those storm surge evacuation areas if you have not done so yet. Now let's move on to the wind threat. With Milton expected to make landfall along the west coast of Florida tomorrow evening or very early Thursday morning as a powerful and large major hurricane, we're going to see an extensive risk of hurricane force winds across much of the Florida Peninsula, the central portion of the peninsula, not just in the landfall location along the west coast where we have that hurricane warning in effect northward from Bonita Beach up to the Suwannee River, including Tampa Bay, but we have that hurricane warning also in effect for places like Orlando, Ocala, Melbourne, up to Palm Coast and St. Augustine, across the interior of the I-4 corridor over to the East Coast, where we have the potential for destructive hurricane force winds. In this region somewhere, we'll see widespread power outages, significant structural damage, and in that area where you're going to see the Category 3 winds right near the core of Milton as it makes landfall, again, you can see devastating damage even to well-built framed homes. Mobile homes will be severely damaged with some destroyed. Large trees will be snapped or uprooted. Significant tree damage, power and communication outages are expected, especially where the core of Milton comes on shore, but again, with the potential for widespread damage and power outages as those hurricane force winds spread across portions of the peninsula. Now let's go on to the rainfall threat. The heaviest rainfall is really going to be concentrated near and to the north of the track of Milton's center across much of central and north Florida. We're expecting widespread rainfall totals of 5 to 12 inches with isolated totals as high as 18 inches in some areas. And again, that could include the I-4 corridor northward up towards St. Augustine and Jacksonville. In terms of the flooding risk, we have a high risk of flash flooding from Wednesday into Thursday, including the Tampa metro area, Orlando metro area, Ocala, up towards the Daytona Beach area. This is that where we're expecting to see significant risk of life-threatening flash and urban flooding. Again, what happens when you get into that 15 inches of rain or so? You're going to see flooding of homes and businesses. You're going to see flooding that prompts evacuations and rescues. And flooding is going to occur in some places where it doesn't normally happen. So again, please be on the lookout for any evacuation orders or other advice you're given by your local officials if you live in a flood-prone area. So let's wrap up here with the key messages associated with Milton this morning as we move into our last full day of preparation before impacts begin on Wednesday. A large area of destructive storm surge with the highest inundation amounts exceeding 10 feet above ground level is expected along portions of the west central coast of the Florida Peninsula. If you are in a storm surge warning area, this is an extremely life-threatening situation and you should follow any evacuation advice you've been given. Devastating hurricane force winds are expected along a portion of of the Florida West Coast, where the hurricane warning is in effect, and Milton is expected to remain a hurricane as it moves across the Florida Peninsula, bringing life-threatening hurricane force winds, especially in gusts, that will cause widespread power outages and structural damage. And again, heavy rainfall along the Florida Peninsula will produce the risk of life-threatening flash and urban flooding through Thursday, along with the risk for longer-term moderate and major river flooding. So please stay here with us at the National Hurricane Center at Hurricanes.gov for the latest on Milton. You can find impacts on your local weather at your local National Weather Service forecast office at weather.gov. We'll be back with you throughout the rest of the day and the rest of the event. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Brennan at the National Hurricane Center.